Welcome, people, everybody, citizens, visitors. So nice to have you here and for this Christmas season. I know we should all maybe have a minute of silence for Mayor Bridge having to struggle and suffer in California in that beautiful weather. So anyways, it's a pleasure for me to be able to sit in his chair and for this council meeting. I'll call it to order, and disclosure of pecuniary interests under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Hearing none, we will carry on. Minutes of the previous meeting, moved by Councillor Dirksen, Councillor Colwell, second by Councillor Colwell, that the minutes of November 21st, 2017 council meeting be approved. All in favor? Opposed, if any? We'll carry that carried. Apologize for the blue pen. What did I do with my black one? Right there. There's a couple of them. Oh, yeah, there it is. Perfect. Thank you. Now, got that done. Additional items disclosed as other business. Anybody? Everybody. I have one for sure. You'll think of something. Okay. Then we have, is there a resolution for? Yes. Resolution for, moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Anderson, the Town of Minto convenes into Committee of the Whole. All in favor? Declare that motion carried. Okay, public meeting. We have none. Correct? And now we come to delegations. Welcome to the press. And the first delegation will be the County of Wellington, and Linda Dixon is here. Welcome, Linda, and a stellar job in conducting your seminar or educational session there.
Thank you.
And I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Deputy Mayor Faulkner and members of council. A couple of reports that I just wanted to make some very brief comments on, because I know that you have them in front of you. The first one is proposed amendments to our emergency response plan. And I want to highlight just a couple of the areas, because several of them are housekeeping style amendments. But the first item under comments, with respect to the members of the control group. The province has come out with some guidelines this year in terms of how they are interpreting and requiring what they require for verification with respect to the regulations under the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act. So all municipalities are required to have a municipal emergency control group, and they are looking at that as being the control group defined, and they are sticking to that they should be either members of council or members or staff employees. So in the past, with respect to the emergency response plan and based on suggestions, they used to suggest that, supporting agencies should also be part of your control group. So what we've done with respect to this amendment is everybody with respect to the bullet points there are still considered members of the control group as listed in the emergency response plan for the town of Minto. However, we've taken police, paramedic services, utilities, hydros, and public health out of the control group section. And I want to stress this, they're out of the control group section, but we're taking all of those agencies. They're still in the plan. Their roles and responsibilities will stay the same, and we're putting them under supporting agencies to make sure that we're meeting the regulations as set out by the province for control group members.
Can I ask your opinion on that?
I would love to get rid of it altogether.
Yeah, and where I have the issue, if I may, council, is as soon as you start making too specific a rule, sure enough, Murphy's Law is going to put you behind the 8 ball someplace. And
Yeah.
is there a procedure in there that can be adjusted at the time of the critical incident?
So how
Because
how I think the best way to answer that is what we've been trying to do in the county with the county and all the member municipalities, and what we did the training on this year is move towards the incident management system as a response.
correct.
We need to maintain the control group section in the plan because that's part of the regulations and the legislation, and we can't get away from that. So we're keeping that. But I think if you take a look at this group, that's the control group, and take a look at how the response in the Emergency Operations Center unfolded during the June events. It was a small group. It was essentially an IMS command structure with the head of council, your senior staff, your scribe, your emergency information officer, and then in terms of the fire chief and the road authority and water and wastewater, they tend to take on more of that operation section.
Absolutely.
And then they would come into the EOC, into the meetings
Okay.
for briefings and stuff. So it's there and it works. It's just trying to maintain that
Thank you.
structure, if that helps. Okay. And then the other item I just wanted to touch on was item 4. And that's with respect to emergency information officers. And there was a lot of work done this year with our county communication staff and staff at all the member municipalities, based on a number of events that we've had in the past, to come up with a good model and identify, again, for the regulations and the legislation, who the specific emergency information officers would be for each municipality. So they developed a protocol in conjunction with the municipalities, and all the municipalities have reviewed and accepted that protocol. So one of the major sections in the amendments is to take the protocol as it identifies the emergency information officers for each municipality in it and make sure we've got it included in the plan, and then that satisfies an additional regulated requirement.
Okay. Any
And I
questions?
think those are the key ones.
Linda? So do we deal with that recommendation first, Mr. CAO? Okay. Recommendation that the Council of the Town of Minto supports the changes to the emergency response plan for the County of Wellington and member municipalities, and authorizes the passing of a bylaw adopting amendment number 4 to the emergency response plan in open session. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Anderson, Councillor Elliott, all in favor? Declare the motion carried. Okay, go ahead.
And then the second report is the report we do on an annual basis to council, just outlining how we've met the requirements under the legislation for the town's emergency management program, and then a couple of highlights. But just very quickly, again, going back to the province and how they are being very specific this year with respect to meeting compliance. Last year, council passed a resolution adopting a revised emergency program committee structure, and for the purposes of the regulations, we comply with that. The structure complies with the regulations. And the committee met to review its program on March 23rd, discuss the response plan. Training is the requirement is to have a minimum of 4 hours for the control group members. And again, that comes back to what we did with looking at the amendments to the plan. But we've done a number of other training as well, which we try to do on a regular basis with different areas of our emergency management program. For the annual exercise this year, we submitted an exemption request, and I mentioned this to council when I did presented
Correct.
on the after action report. To date, I'm still waiting to hear whether the province is accepting that exemption. I've been told through staff that they've reviewed it, they are supportive of it, and they've sent it off for final approval, but as of yet, there's been no final approval.
Okay.
So I'm saying we've completed that requirement for 2017. And then we had another number of public education. Again, that's handled throughout the year in a number of events, but just a few of them that I wanted to touch base on. Page 3 of or page 12, I guess it is, of your agenda item. We attended Minto Safe Kids Day on May 12th. Our emergency management truck was at Minto Touch a Truck on June 17th, and there was information, I believe, provided for the 911 run that was held June 4th. Okay. And that, I think, touches the highlights of the required program elements that we have to complete on an annual basis.
Perfect.
And then there's just a couple of items with respect to strategic planning, and of course, debris management was something that we found through the flood events as well, and we'll continue to try and put something together in terms of a debris management plan. Now, there is something that has just come up that I want to mention to Council. We got an email on Friday from the province, Office of the Fire Marshal and Emergency Management. They had undertaken a review, had a consultant come in and do a review of their emergency management programs, as well as the legislation. They surveyed a number of people. That review has now been completed. The province has taken a look at that review and come up with an emergency management action plan. So at this point, I don't know what that's about. We're been made aware of it, but I'm sure it'll mean some interesting discussions and things to consider for the next few years. So we'll see what happens with that.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you, and again, thank you for all the work, I guess. And I realize it's regulation and all that kind of stuff, but it's still it takes skill to get buy-in from everybody, and we thank you for your efforts on that. And obviously, good training gives good results, because I think we can be proud of everybody for what they did in June, June 23rd, and follow up. Recommendation that the Council of the Town of Minto accepts the annual status report on the town's emergency management program for 2017. Could I have a mover? Councillor Caldwell, Councillor Turton, second it. All in favor? I declare the motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay home, and you can stay for all the rest of the exciting items on the council. And now we have the second delegation is our Maitland Valley presentation, and the council representative, Councillor Turton, will, I'll turn that over to him, and you can do the introductions, and even though I think we know everybody, but.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Faulkner, council, staff, guests. Appreciate the opportunity for Maitland Valley to come before you today. And for sure, you guys, everybody knows these gentlemen. And we have Mr. Phil Beard. He's our general manager, secretary, treasurer, and
Welcome,
Steve Jackson.
Steve.
He is the flood erosion safety services coordinator. So if you gentlemen would like to sit down, unless you want to stand. Only one of us can speak at once. So,
and just ask when you speak, pull the mic over to you. Okay, because we have a big audience.
Today we want to talk about three items. The first one being the Maitland Valley Conservation Authority 2018-2020 work plan. And second one was to provide an update on the Harrison hydrological study. The third thing is to identify why. This is the important one. Possibly a little bit more important than the first two. The first two are important as well. But we want you to get the point on the third one. Okay, so we want to identify why the new federal provincial flood damage reduction program is needed. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Phil. Please.
Thank you, Vice Chair, Mr. Turton. If I could, yep, that's the right slide. Great. Just before I begin, I'll just give you the standard background that Maitland Valley is governed and primarily funded by the 15 municipalities in the watershed. And we were established by the province at the request of the municipalities in the watershed to help municipalities work with issues such as flooding and water quality that go beyond municipal boundaries. So that's the standard background. Could I have the next slide, please? So as Dave mentioned, we've just updated our 3-year work plan for 2018 to 2020. And a copy of the summary was in your package. So I'm just going to go through the highlights because I assume you've all had a chance to read it. And we're trying to really focus our limited resources on doing some important things really well. We've had to shrink our number of services and things we're doing because we couldn't do everything well. And we want to to try and really focus in. So our key priority is to strengthen those flood and erosion safety services so that we can provide the information and support municipalities to prepare and respond to flood emergencies. Our second key priority is to strengthen our watershed stewardship services with 470,000 acres of prime farmland in the watershed, working with landowners and municipalities to help keep soil and nutrients on the land and out of the water courses. Just helps to save everybody money. And the third priority, and probably one of the most important ones, is to stabilize our financial base so that we can strengthen those two key services and look after our key infrastructure and equipment. We own an awful lot of buildings and infrastructure that that we have to figure out what to do with because they're not core to our needs. So it's one of the challenges that the board has in the coming 3 years. So with that the other thing is our board has directed that we keep levy increases between 55 and 58,000 every year for the next 3 years. So to really keep those limited. It's less than we need, but it means that we have to focus on ways to reduce our operating costs as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Steve to talk about the hydrology project.
Thank you. So I just wanted to take a minute to review the goals of the Hairston Hydrology Project. So the first goal is to develop a better computer flood forecast model so that during storm events we can better predict the flood magnitude and timing. And the second part of the project is that once we have this computer model done, we want to be able to model what would happen if Hurricane Hazel in the 50s that in Woodbridge, if it happened exactly over the Hairston watershed. And why that's important is Hurricane Hazel is the flood standard that's used for floodplain mapping for regulation and planning purposes. So once we have a really good model, we can run Hurricane Hazel to see what the flood magnitude is. The end result, and I think of why we want to achieve these things, is twofold. Is first, during a flood event, we want to be able to call Chief Harrow and say, for example, at 11 o'clock, the flooding is going to be at map 2. These are the people, and he'd be clearly know who to evacuate. We could say at 2 o'clock, the flood level is going to be at map 3, and give some timing for both how to know how many people he has to evacuate, but how quickly those evacuations need to occur. And the second part is for planning and regulations to have updated mapping so that we have better tools to support planning and regulations for the town of Hairston. So next slide, please. So before we could make the computer model, it's necessary to have good data to be able to calibrate it. So for the last 3 years, Maitland Valley has collected water level in 15 locations in the Hairston watershed. And we've done scores of stream flow measurements in that 3 years. It just so happened that during those 3 years, we did have a 100-year flood event. So all 9 rain gauges and 15 stream gauges in Hairston watershed were completely operational. We didn't lose any data during that event. To my knowledge, it's unprecedented in a watershed the size of Hairston to be able to capture the 100-year flood event to calibrate a model. And what that basically means is
amazing.
When you're calibrating the model, you can have a high level of certainty for a very big flood, how the watershed's going to react. And that in turn means you don't have to make conservative assumptions. So you can be far more accurate. So what we will eventually predict as the Hurricane Hazel flood magnitude is going to be far more accurate than what we've been able to predict to date. So the hydrology model is nearly completed by the consultant. He's literally, after weeks of work, he's literally days away. I tried to get him to meet this deadline of today, but we slightly missed that. So we're days away. So the consultant has used the model to look at historical events and to see how well it predicted flood events. So when we look at June 23rd and other big events based on the rainfall, it does really an exceptional job of estimating both the flood magnitude and timing. So I feel we'll be able to give very good information to Chief Harrow and during a flood event. So Minto has committed to flying LiDAR for the town of Hairston in the spring of 2018 to support floodplain mapping. Pending the National Disaster Mitigation Program funding, they may opt to fly the entire watershed. This is important because we need that good ground data in order to generate our floodplain maps. Again, it comes down to every level that you can be more accurate. It means your end result is going to be less conservative, and from both when it comes to flood forecasting as well as planning and regulations, we want to be as accurate as we possibly can. So once MVCA is able to get that LiDAR information, we'll be able to undertake in early 2018, as soon as we get that data, floodplain mapping, so that we can get that process going. Next slide, please. So switching gears, I wanted to talk about the need for new federal provincial flood damage reduction program. So if the town of Minto was interested in developing a flood damage reduction project, the existing National Disaster Mitigation Program is not designed for major projects like that. The current program is really set up for just smaller projects like floodplain mapping and smaller scale mitigation. Any big mitigation program is going to take considerable time and effort to complete. So there used to be a federal provincial flood damage reduction program in Ontario, and I'd like to spend the next few minutes highlighting why that worked well in the 70s and 80s, specifically in Listowel. So next slide. So Listowel used to have significant flooding issues dating back to the turn of the previous century. Listowel, similar to Harriston, is built literally on top of the river. Driving through Listowel today, you'd never know that. Basically, the roads and stores are built directly on the river, and there's basically, if you picture a giant subway tunnel underneath town, known locally as the conduit that's used to carry flood flows. So Listowel used to flood once every 7 years, and locals talk about it being almost a national pastime between intermissions in a hockey game to run outside and see if the town was flooding yet. It was quite a common occurrence. So over the years, many schemes had been suggested to reduce the level of flooding. In 1973, the Maitland Valley Conservation Authority undertook a study for flood control possibilities for the town of Listowel, and that study was completed 2 years later. Next slide, please. So many different options were considered to reduce the flood in Listowel. The planning process occurred similar to the current day environmental assessment. There needed to be a balance between the local economy, impacted residents, risk reduction, and overall cost. So the replacement of the conduit was recommended because it involved the least costs, and it would include structural repair to the conduit to allow businesses to stay in the downtown core and a vastly reduced flood risk. So it changed the downtown core from being at risk of flooding from a 1 in 7 year flood to being able to handle above the 1 in 100 year flood. So it was from the town's, from an economic livelihood point of view, was a significant overall. So they were able to utilize an 85% grant program to invest in those capital works to reduce the flood risk. And that's one of I'm going to highlight a few key things, but one of the big things in that program was an 85% grant rate for rural municipalities. That there was an understanding that rural municipalities had different financial abilities compared to the bigger cities. So that funding formula took that into account. Next slide. So construction started in 1979 to rebuild the conduit. So the removal and replacement of existing buildings during construction added to the overall length of the project. There's a legal and procedural process that could also not be rushed, and it's expected that any similar project in an urban area is going to have that the same time constraint issues. And the big message there is just the length of time that it takes to complete these projects. Next slide. So the construction was done in 8 phases and finally completed in 1991. So the math on that is 12 years to complete from the time construction started. And from the launch to the planning stage, that was nearly 18 years. And so by the very nature, these projects cannot be done quickly. And this is the second reason why the funding program worked well, is it was long term. Throughout the project, there was a clear idea of the amount of funding that was going to be available, and there weren't concerns of, well, we got to get this 12-year project done in 2 years because our funding's going to run out. And really, there would be no way to have compressed that 12 years of construction into a smaller time window. Next slide. So in the current aerial photograph, you can't see the river as it is buried under the town, as I said. The channel on the downstream side of the town is constructed to move floodwaters as quickly as possible. So in almost every other circumstance, MVCA supports slowing water down. These are very particular cases where MVCA supports basically speeding the water up. When you have communities that at flood risk, once they have the floodwaters coming to them, you want to be able to move those floodwaters as quickly as possible and safely through the town. And particularly after you've exhausted other opportunities in the headwaters to reduce flooding. When you've done that, then it's a question of moving the water as quickly as possible.
You talked about, Steve, the flood comparing Hairston to Listowel in the flooding and whatnot. Where are the headwaters for Listowel?
So Listowel, actually, the floodwaters are quite close to the Conestoga Dam at the Grand River watershed. It's heading up and towards that direction.
That's where I thought, but and are they the headwaters and the length of the tributaries and all that, the municipal creeks, and pretty comparable?
They're similar. So Hairston's basin's 110 square kilometers and Listowel's is 90 square kilometers.
Okay.
So they're slightly, due to their characteristics of slope, though, the waters move a little quicker in Listowel than they do Hairston. So
Really?
flooding is a little bit quicker in the Listowel area than in Hairston.
Thank you.
All right. So our next slide here, please. Thanks. So if there was a new federal provincial flood damage reduction program, considered that these are the elements based on the lessons that we've learned in Listowel. First, it should be a long-term program, perhaps permanent. Flood, as we've said, flood reduction infrastructure takes many years to plan and install. There needs to be certainty in the funding program as you're going through the process. There's no point coming up with a plan that there's no way to pay for at the end of the day. Second, the funding needs to be expanded to include the long-term maintenance and capital replacement. We know from Listowel that this infrastructure is no different. Similar to any bridge or municipal drain, maintenance is required. So it's important, if you're going to get the grant money to put the infrastructure in, knowing the limited resources may be available in a rural area compared to an urban area, there needs to be some abilities for the rural municipalities to take care of their infrastructure. Third is the flood standard needs to be updated for each province to account for the types of flooding we're seeing. So Public Safety Canada has recommended revisiting the flood standard. The real thing is, before you put new infrastructure in the ground, you might as well look at the flood standard first. There's no point of building your infrastructure and then deciding 10 years or 5 years later that it doesn't quite meet the new flood standard that's calculated. So fourth, the program should include riverine and non-riverine flood risks. In the June 23rd flood event here, it was a good example where there was flooding nowhere close to rivers. Basically, every low draw around, there was water across the roads. And that's where, all these low-lying areas that are prone to flooding should be mapped. And the last point, fifth, is, as I mentioned before, is that there needs to be an increased grant rate for rural municipalities based on a sliding scale. And we'd recommend, something similar to what was in the 70s and 80s of an 85% grant for rural municipalities. So I'll turn it back over to Phil.
Yeah, thank you, Phil. So is there questions for either Steve or Phil today? Go ahead, Councillor Dirksen. Sorry.
Thank you. In Listowel, I remember when all that construction was going on. Did it follow? Does that follow a riverbed?
So,
or was there not a river through Listowel?
So originally there was a river, and so over time they built on top of it, and each time they built on top of it, it was more or less sort of cobbled together. So it does follow the.
It does follow the old riverbed.
The old riverbed, yes.
And for those buildings that had to be torn down and replaced, was there any compensation for any of those building owners, or was that part of the 85% program, or how did that?
So that was part of the 85% grant program. Okay. So basically, there was, again, in a older streetscape, got brand new buildings on top of the conduit in the grant program.
Thanks.
CEO White.
It definitely was a program for the 70s and 80s.
Hmm.
Do you think the approach is changed significantly now? In other words, you mentioned looking at downstream and upstream impacts. Is it more of a look at more naturalized approach rather than a mega project? I know personally favor the more naturalized approach, and are you saying that you think we may need to do that here? Or
I think I'm suggesting it's an avenue that you would want to consider. Is the one question is, as you know, as we go through the hydrology project, and is you want to exhaust all those possibilities in the headwaters, and then there may be the question of, once we've exhausted all those possibilities, is there still enough of a flood risk that warrants doing more work in Harriston to help to mitigate potential flood damages?
if I may, we also have the opportunity downstream too to kind of move water out more quickly, because that turns out to be part of a municipal drain. So I mean, I know that you know all this, but I guess I was optimistic and hopeful, depending on what the study shows, that we might be able to mitigate it without doing that to the river, but I guess it will remain to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? All right. Well, so hearing none, then I'd like to thank Phil and Steve for coming to council this afternoon, and I'd like to thank council for listening to Phil and Steve. We just went over the MVCA's 2018-2020 work plan and the Harriston hydrological project, and the need for the federal provincial flood damage reduction program. And I think Steve spelled it out very well. So we would encourage the council to consider supporting the need for the federal provincial flood damage reduction program. So this summer, myself and the two vice chairs and Phil, we did visit Mr. Pettipies and Mr. Nader. We talked to him about these same issues, and we were very well received, and it was a good visit. So, and Steve, June 23rd will be remembered long after we're all gone, and we just wanted to thank you for your participation that day, and all that you did for the town of Minto and all the other towns around. So if there's nothing else, why, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, is there?
Oh, I have a couple of Minto pins for you fine gentlemen.
I think I got one.
Oh, you do?
Okay.
I think you gave me one.
Okay.
Well, that's
Motion to receive. Yep. Okay, then I will entertain a motion to receive the work plan and presentation by Maitland Valley Conservation. Moved by Councillor Turton, seconded by Councillor Dirksen. All in favor? Declare the motion carried. Okay, correspondence. Anything in correspondence that jumps out at you that you want to bring forward? There was one for me. Like anybody? Councillor Caldwell, Councillor Dirksen.
I'm just looking at the letter that we sent to the Minister of Agriculture, Food, and
Correct.
Rural Affairs.
Well written.
Food, Agriculture, and Rural Affairs. I'm just questioning the last couple of paragraphs that seemed a little funny to me. Requiring the county map be changed to reflect the inaccurate provincial maps will significantly restrict farm activities on these more marginal lands. Is that what we? I guess I don't understand what that means.
Hey, Deputy Mayor Faulkner, I think the concern that was brought up was that some of our secondary agricultural lands were now mapped as primary agricultural lands.
Absolutely.
Correct.
And so by doing that, under the official plan for the county, the things that you can do with those secondary ag lands is significantly reduced. That was what we were trying to convey in that letter. That was why there was concern, I thought,
Okay.
from council.
Okay, I guess I saw those as maybe they're not really non-farm activities, but I guess it's less intensive farm activities, right? So I guess I was looking at it the other way. I mean, I was looking at it this way, but that makes it more clear.
I guess, sorry, to add a little bit more detail, loss of an opportunity to create a lot for agricultural business type activities associated with the agriculture.
Yes.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
Apologize if the wording didn't quite convey that, but that was the intent.
Yeah, I had to read that two or three
Yeah.
times.
No, I just had it marked because I just wasn't sure where we were going with that, but hopefully we get a response to the letter.
Anybody else? I have a question for CAO White in respect to the letter from Municipal Affairs. Do we have to be concerned with anything on that? That's the transient, right? Accommodations.
We have not involved ourselves with any of that.
Because that's county, right? We technically, that responsibility of that is the county, because they have the social housing and the subsidized housing. And
you're referring to the
maybe I've got the wrong one.
Letter on. They're talking about destination marketing programs and having tax to generate revenue for tourism organizations and so forth.
Correct. No, that's the one.
So we have not availed ourselves of that.
Okay.
I don't know, treasurer or manager of business and economic development have anything to add to that?
Any comment? Non-issue?
No. We talked about this, right, for Airbnb and
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Any other correspondence? Then I guess we would accept a motion to, receive the correspondence. Councillor Dirksen, Councillor Caldwell, all in favor? I declare the motion carried. Okay, reports of committees. So first of all, Maitland Valley Conservation.
Yes,
Councillor
thank you,
Turton.
Deputy Mayor Faulkner. I think a lot of these two meetings, or the one for sure, was we talked about exactly what we talked about here today. So it's more the work plan and our financial situation. So I think it's good reading. Thank you.
Any motion on that? Oh, okay. So we need a motion to accept. Oh, did you? You've included the both
Yes, I'll make a
items in
motion
there.
on both, sure.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Turkin. Second by Councillor Anderson. All in favor? Declare the motion carried. Okay, cultural round table.
I'll sit today. I have a whole bunch of minutes, so I'll be brief though. The Culture Roundtable, we have both October and November's minutes on here because the last meeting we couldn't get to. So back in October, the highlights were basically going over preparing for November's festivities, I guess, number of festivities, and reviewing our Culture Days events. So we tried something new with Culture Days this year, having a variety of different venues and events over the course of the weekend. Some went really well and some had nobody attend. So you never know. Our culture bus is always sold out, so we're looking at potentially going to do a culture bus every other year as something to take place on Culture Days. So we talked about that. And then at our November event, we'll go to those minutes, or our November meeting, which was just last week. We reviewed the success of all of our Light Up the Park, Light Up the Town events. Both of our Christmas promotion events have been done, and a lot of these events are partnerships between various committees. So the Culture Roundtable partners with the downtown committees and the Lions and the Kinsmen and the schools, and everybody partners together on a lot of these things. So there's a lot of overlap amongst things. But everything has gone very well for our winter festivals. And our November meeting was quite short because we had a Spark meeting. So that's the Symposium for Performing Rural Arts in rural communities. Performing rural arts, performing arts in rural communities. And we're looking at forming a hub in Midwestern Ontario. So there's some funding that's become available, and we're looking at how we can utilize that to expand the network outside of Minto. So that's all the Culture Roundtable minutes. And then economic development planning. Just keep going. Keep going.
Can I make a comment on that first? And perhaps we should deal with the cultural roundtable first. But
sure.
I think the citizens of our fine town need to understand that these things just don't occur with the stroke of a wand. And I think on behalf of the citizens, thank you guys for organizing all these events like that. Was it what was it called at Lions Park in Palmerston there? Light up the park. Light up the park. Mm-hmm. Like what a tremendous event and well attended. I think you had way beyond your expectations. Yes. and the lighting of the lights in Harrison and the citizens need to thank you guys for doing a great job of organizing them, because those are neat things to attend. Not only are they neat things to attend, but they're neat to see. And that park in Palmerston is just beautiful. And all those. So
thank you.
Citizens of Minto, say thank you once in a while.
Thank you. And thank you to all the people, the volunteers that help.
Let me say that's coming out of the community too, if we could. Like that's everybody I talked to, just the events across Minto, not just Palmerston Park, but.
So if that helps to motivate you even more, well, it's passed its test.
It's funny that we're talking about events, because in the next set of minutes from our Economic Development Planning Committee, the whole focus of this meeting was looking at our strategic plan. And so there's a lot of stuff in here, but I want to focus on the strategic planning part. Okay. So my team of Summer, Taylor, and myself sat and went through. We do review our strat plan regularly, but this one we really sat down and went through all the items in the strat plan and all the projects that we're working on that touch on the strat plan. And our department probably deals with the most initiatives in the strat plan, and we have numerous programs supporting those. So the next, like Schedule C, highlights what's in the strat plan, what we're working on that relates to that. If there's a blue dot, those items are also identified in our business retention and expansion action plan for 2016 to 2018, those being things that are business community actions that were developed out of surveys with our business community. And then we also work off of our cultural plan, and the green dots are also related to our cultural plan. So there's a lot of overlap in things. And then we kind of identified, by going through this process, that there's some key takeaways that we wanted our Economic Development Committee and I guess Council eventually to be aware of. I'm just going to get to that part here. Scroll. We had some suggested updates to our strat plan and just things to consider. And one of those is events. Within the strat plan, it refers to, or I guess when we updated this, we were quite heavily involved in events, and then that was changed to be facilitating versus leading. And we feel that we really are getting back into leading events and versus facilitating. We don't have a problem with that, because many times it takes somebody to lead something and pull people together and everything, but we would like that to be either corrected or acknowledged that council and everyone's in support of us doing these things, because it does take time and it takes time away from other activities. So that's something that we wanted to just be acknowledged if that's what we're supposed to be doing, and that's fine. We're happy to do that. We think it's good for the community. We just want that to be noted that that does happen then at the expense of some other things. And there was also an issue with the number of committees that we work with. We love our communities, definitely, and our committees, but we probably have about 13 or 14 different groups. That means that many agendas, that many minutes, that much prep, that much follow-up in terms of projects coming out of those things. So we're looking at ways that we can streamline committees, get more of them combined together. There's a lot of overlap with projects and different people on the different committees. So that's something that we're looking at. And we brought all these issues forward to this group. We also identified what we thought were key projects and priorities for 2018 and tasked our committee with reviewing those and coming up with what they thought that we should be working on. And that is Schedule D. We didn't have time to get into a lengthy discussion about these, but based on a simple vote, the things that they want to see us working on in the top 5 are our Town Folio profile, which is basically an online community profile embedded within our website. Our youth spaces program, so converting a portion of the launch at Unit 3 into a youth space, as well as working with community groups on outdoor youth spaces and consulting with youth on things that they would like to see within the community to be youth friendly. The other one is just increased promotion of community assets. And obviously in 2018, the Clifford construction will be a big project. The ones in green there were all ones that were tied. So like the North for Youth stuff, social media planning, that's another big thing. We manage a large number of websites as well as social media platforms for a variety of projects. So spending time on those things was looked at as important, as well as opportunities for collaborating with the chamber on that sort of thing. Move to Minto campaign with all the new housing developments happening. How can we work with our residential developers to attract people here? Getting back to a buy local campaign that we used to do a few years ago. Targeting businesses for occupancy. Specific ones, now that we're starting to have properties becoming available and usable spaces, getting people into those spaces. The other one is satellite office recruitment, which is specific to launch, and Summer's going to speak to that later, and exploring neighbor municipality relationships. Again, that's with Launch It. And Summer's going to touch on that in her presentation. But.
Perfect. Any questions?
It's for you, Deputy Mayor Faulkner. What is Town Folio profile?
Yeah, so Town Folio is a community profile that gets embedded on your website, and as the information through StatsCan or any other research that goes on there, it's updated automatically. So Bruce County is a good example. They have it for their whole county, but then they also have it for each of their municipalities. This is something we saw back in February that we wanted to do, and we were hoping that the County of Wellington might take that on. We're still waiting to hear on that. So we're planning on doing it one way or another for 2018 because we haven't had an updated community profile for a while.
Councillor Anderson?
I didn't have an answer.
Well, you were just making sure that I didn't miss Councillor Caldwell. That's good. All right. So any other questions? I can't keep up to your speed, Belinda, because you whipped into economic development before I got the motion passed for.
Oh, sorry.
The cultural roundtable. So could I have a motion to pass both the October 23rd minutes and the November 27th minutes? Councillor Anderson, Councillor Turton, all in favor? Declare the motion carried. Okay, now.
Can I just, I forgot to mention one other thing about the strat planning stuff. We're doing a lot of work in the last year around youth, as you're all aware. And at the joint meeting, that came out as something that everyone is really happy with. So Taylor did want me to mention, when we first got into getting into the whole youth action councils and everything, it was identified that it would take about 5 hours a week to work on that stuff. It's actually taking about 2 days a week.
Wow.
So we just want to make sure everyone's aware of this and that's okay. And kind of get some feedback, maybe not today, but down the road. Obviously, we think youth is important and everything. But again, there's priorities and give and take, and how do we want to handle all this so that we can get everything done that we're supposed to get done.
CAO White first.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Just so council is aware, there will be some initiatives in the budget that will reflect the new work on the youth programming. So that's probably a good time to have that discussion.
Okay, perfect. And Councillor Anderson was next.
So that was my question. Gabby's position, because she's helpful, and do we know whether funding is being continued for
So
that?
for Gabby's position, the funding runs out in December. So Gabby is the Youth Resiliency Coordinator for North for Youth. And her funding runs out through Trillium in December. We have applied for BRNE funding because youth is a component of our BRNE. So we were able to access $5,000 from the County of Wellington, which was approved. And then Wellington North has some funding, and I'm not sure where the other 5,000 is coming from at this point. I know they have it, but I can't remember. And that will get her through until March 31st. They have applied for Trillium funding for a different project that would see Gabby stay around, but they don't find out until March 31st. So we're hoping we can keep her around till then. They find out in March, and then we have to have funding from March till June to keep her around because that's when they get the cash for the Trillium the next round. And if that doesn't pan out, she's right now figuring out a sustainability plan for keeping her around.
Just to add to, if I might, so have we approached the county about the importance of keeping Gabby on, or?
We have done that through our BRNE application, and I know Wellington North has set the funds aside. I'm not sure where Mapleton's at because they're in between staff right now, but
do we need to communicate that, Mr. CAO, to the county, that how important we think that position is?
Just as part of my question, so if Gabby's funding doesn't come through and you're spending 2 days a week now, what would be the estimated impact on your time without Gabby to help?
And so Gabby works on more than just the Youth Action Councils, right? Yeah. Like she supports them, but she does a lot more. So I don't see it would maybe increase a little bit, but I don't think like that would still be able to manage. But we just want to make you aware of how much time it does take.
For you, Deputy Mayor Faulkner, I was just going to ask, is there any way that some of this workload can be down to the committee? Could the committee help you out
to the youth way? Or to
any of the committees that you're involved in? Or is it doesn't happen?
No. Everybody's busy, and it's a struggle to get. Some people are some committees are better than others at taking on tasks, do this day or do that this day. But in terms of something that's longer going that you need, them not so much. Yeah.
Okay. No. Yeah. Go.
Yeah. Sure. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Faulkner. So are you saying then, if without your involvement, some of these wouldn't survive? Some of the committees might not survive?
I wouldn't say they wouldn't survive and that they shouldn't survive. It's just
might not do much.
They wouldn't be as
a lot of
effective.
things don't get done.
Yeah.
If we are not facilitating and doing it, it doesn't get done. A lot of times they're good to come to the meeting, and a lot of times we're telling people what we're doing, and to get them to give us input is a struggle sometimes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it's not an effective use of our time. I think the folks from Maitland Valley said you get taking on so many things that you can't do anything well. And that's the point where we were getting some of our key projects that we started a year or 2 years ago. We're not finishing them up because now we're doing all these other things, right? And we can't keep up to all this stuff. So we need to identify which things do we really want to be working on. And that's what we were looking for feedback from the Economic Development Committee on.
So then my statement then to follow up what I originally said was, if the council can be of assistance to lobby anybody or to act on your behalf, then that recommendation needs to come from economic development, correct?
Sure. Yep.
Thank you. Now, we need a motion to accept, or did we do that already?
Did that.
No.
I think we just did
No,
cultural
no,
roundtable.
No, we just did the cultural roundtable.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, don't.
I'll move to receive.
Thank
economic
you.
Development.
Seconder?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Councillor Elliott? All in favor?
Had enough.
Anybody else want to run it? Don't help so good. Okay, so trees for Minto. I believe Councillor Dirkson's going to take that one.
Yes. I can wake up my. Here we go. Yes. So we met last week on Thursday evening. Had a good meeting. We discussed the different ways we can promote the trees for Minto. Last year, 2017, we did an open house. We advertised in the paper. We had some information in the text newsletter and on social media. We have set mailers out in the past, but they're expensive, and we haven't found that they've been that successful. So we're going to go with with those methods that have been successful. Happy to say that we were able to distribute 9,715 trees in 2017. We were really hoping to push that over the 10,000, but we didn't quite make it, so that'll be maybe 2018's goal. We had a lot of discussion on a hazelnut trees demo site, but we need more information, so we're going to be getting that. Rob Johnson's going to do some more research for us and get back to us. And we looked at a budget for 2018, and so we accepted the one that was presented. See whether it flies or not now. And we also had a brief discussion at the end of the meeting about maybe joining the Minto Trails Committee and have a Trees and Trails Committee instead of two separate ones. But the committee members didn't feel that there was enough similarities between it, enough things to work together, but thought maybe having a yearly meeting to just discuss items together maybe would be a good way to start.
So you suggesting that should be on the agenda for the next Trails meeting?
Probably. Yes, it could be.
I think we can arrange
I think our secretary will look after that. Our scribe will look after that.
Well, no, I'm saying because I'm the chair of the Trails Committee.
I thought you were pointing over there. Okay.
No.
Yes, actually, Deputy Mayor, that would be a great idea.
Okay.
I have a question.
Sure.
The hazelnut tree demo, are we talking about the town setting up like an acreage or a property?
No, we're talking about Trees for Minto. We have some ideas of places that, and we haven't settled on one yet, but just it would be a private landowner.
Okay. Who
would be doing it.
Okay.
Yeah. So no, it wouldn't be
just as a way of demonstrating or testing it to see if
yes, and I think it says in here, trees for crops are a part of the Trees for Minto, not just windbreaks and that kind of thing. So it's just another. It's a crop that may be sustainable and.
Okay, interesting. I was quite fascinated by that.
Okay. Thank you. Then, any other questions?
Let's make a motion for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hockey game on tonight or what?
No, tomorrow night.
Okay.
Motion by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Turton, that the council receives the Trees for Minto Committee meeting minutes of November 23rd, 2017, and approves any recommendations contained therein. All in favor? Declare the motion carried. I've never seen one worded that quite that like that before. Okay, Trails Committee. I think I can handle that one. You've all had a chance to read them. We're right in the throes now of preparing a budget for the town of Minto, simply because for the trails, simply because our grant with the County of Wellington is running out in 2018. So that's going to be indeed a challenge, but hopefully I have made some contacts with the county, and hopefully they will continue that program. So that's not out of the realms. $10.
$100.
Facilities manager.
Oh, then you better take that one. So is there any questions on trails? We bought one piece of equipment. It literally looks like a scraper, and I think it's going to do a very nice job. It's got 2 bars in it, so the material goes up and over the 2 bars and then levels out. So once we get the right amount of stone dust down, it'll keep the trails very, very nicely for both walking, running, and biking. Any other questions? The neat part about the trails, in my opinion, is we got 3 distinct types. We've got from the Palmerston one, which goes from Palmerston over to the 7th line, is one type. It's a straight railway bed, and is used a lot. Probably the most used trail of any of the 3. And then we have from School Road 7 to Clifford. That's mostly used by literally our Mennonite population to attend church and school down which is located right beside it at School Road 7. So, and then Clifford is unique in a way that it goes through all our lagoon lands, and it's been prepared and treed and all that kind of stuff. So it's 3 very distinct types of trails, and lots of potential. So, yes, Councillor Elliott.
You're done?
I'm done.
I have a question.
Please.
Yeah, I'm wondering about the vandalism. Are vandals become bored of it and not vandalism?
You're talking about our bridge?
Our bridge,
and
or any part there. I mean,
yeah,
graffiti throughout it.
We did the trails right from one end to the other with our. I see there was Greg and myself and Vic Palmer and Rick Rock, I believe is his name.
Yep.
And vandalism was low. Like, we did not see much evidence of vandalism at all. I think once we complete our plan for benches and signs identifying plants and trees, that is going to become a bigger issue. But I think if we do it properly, it'll still keep to a minimum.
The reason I'm saying that, Palmerston Park, we find there's vandalism, and we put the lights up, they vandalize it, and they become bored of it as you continue. Like, when they vandalize, fix it right away. And then it just seemed to get, okay, I've done mine. So I'm just wondering whether they're bored of it already.
I think so. And you brought up an excellent point, and it's called CEPTED. It's crime prevention through environmental design. And I think if the less we make of an issue, the faster they become bored. So I think that's
attention.
So could I have a motion to accept the Trails report? Councillor Colwell, Councillor Turton, all in favor? Declare the motion carried. Launch it, board minutes. Bring up our own.
Hello.
Summer.
Hello. How are you? It's been a while since I've been here. So I am here, the Launch It executive, newly formed executive, which consists of Mayor George Bridge, Glenn Hall, Belinda Whitgraham, and myself. We met on Friday, November the 17th. And part of our goal is just planning for 2018. What are, some new items that we're looking at and developing. And a couple new things, or a couple things that we've identified is kind of finding new training resources. So I reached out to Doug Damon, and he's our rep for Go Forth Institute, which we've implemented into the business flight program. Go Forth is an online training resource that's a 1-year kind of subscription, and you have access to professionals such as lawyers or accountants that you can ask one-on-one questions for new businesses looking to start up or grow. There's different modules, 10 modules for learning, and you develop a business plan through this training. So Doug Damon also has a business where he offers training resources to businesses, and he's offered his services to us for a very nominal fee, if not free, I think just his mileage. So he's going to be actually facilitating a financial training for business on January 23rd. So it'll be a nice introduction to have some new, fresh perspectives and speakers to incorporate into the Launch It curriculum. And also I met with the Mount Forest and District Chamber of Commerce just to see ways about the chambers kind of collaborating a little bit more. This is kind of my chamber hat, but also Launch It. But how the chambers and how we can collaborate a little bit more on maybe doing things within the community, since we are so close in proximity. Maybe we can partner on things and figure that out. So there's been a bit of community outreach. We're also looking at business flight expansion into Hanover and Wellington North. That's kind of at the very starting stages. We've sent proposals to both these places, and we're waiting to hear back. So looking at kind of reaching out into neighboring communities for those things. Then what else do I have here? Oh, the success of our Live to Lead. We discussed that. So I think some of you here were in attendance of Live to Lead. It happened early October. And then we had 2 encore presentations, one in Hanover and one in Center Wellington. All 3, we received really great feedback. We got some email feedback and just even talking with people after the events. Minto, there was 130 attendees at that presentation. Center Wellington, there was 75 people, and Hanover was 120. So we really exceeded our expectations, and we're hoping that we're able to bring that back again next year and connect with more communities and see where that goes. So it's definitely something that's been asked for, and we're excited about that. And we had on December the 6th, actually, we have our last Lunch and Learn of a 4-part series. It's not really in the minutes here, but I just thought I'd update you on that. It was Liz Wiseman's book, Multipliers, and we had 16 attendees at all of these. So it's kind of the same group that attends the full series. So we're looking at expanding that into potentially like a peer-to-peer networking group. There's been some talk about that. So lots of new things kind of developing and happening through different groups and things that we're doing. Belinda kind of touched on satellite offices or different use of space for Launch It, and I wanted to I've been working away at that for the past couple of weeks, and we have some exciting news. Starting in January, there's going to be an Ask an Advisor. So we've always had the Small Business Advisor come to our facility on the second Thursday of each month, but now starting in January, there's going to be on the third Thursday of each month, Second Chance Employment Counseling Services is going to be taking residents at Launch It. So they're going to be there, and they can offer assistance to employees as well as employers, different resources and tools. And then on the fourth Thursday of each month, Tom Lucis from the County of Wellington, Employment and Traction Services, he's going to be taking residents at Launch It. So some nice little resources that we're starting to hone and grow, and hopefully we can get them out into the business community and our community, and they'll be utilized. And then some exciting news. We have a new resident. More exciting news. There's all good news at Launch It. Always good news. But we have a new tenant at Launch It. So Kit Kat Photography, Kathleen Berry, she has moved in to the old Innovative Print space, so the retail space there in Unit 3. and she moved in on November the 1st and has been really, really busy. Ladies' night, she was there taking pictures of like candid photos and headshots of people, of the ladies kind of coming through, and she put that all on social media. So we're really excited to have her, and if you're by, make sure you swing in and say hi to her. I think that's my update. Does anyone have any questions?
Yes. What's her hours of operation?
She's by appointment, so she doesn't necessarily have particular hours, because she does, like a sitting of portraits, and she does mainly families and infants, toddlers, kind of. But she's got some really, really great work.
So I would, I'm thinking outside about our breakfast with Santa. It'd be nice to have somebody there taking pictures of kids with Santa.
For sure, and she's really community oriented. I'm sure if you approached her, she would be definitely happy to come out to those events.
So I would get her phone number from you?
Yeah, certainly.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else have
any other questions? I would.
See, always good news. Great, thank you very much.
Thank you. I would have somebody move by Councillor Caldwell, second by Councillor Turton. I looked first. I did. That the council receives the launch at board meeting minutes of November 17th, 2017, and approves any recommendations contained within. All in favor? Opposed? Declare the motion carried. Okay, staff reports. Risk management official Kyle Davis is here. So welcome, Kyle. Please come up, and you can either stand or sit.
I can sit.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Faulkner and members of council. I'm pleased to be here today. It's been a little while since I have been here. Here to present actually exciting news for us too. The Maitland Valley Source Protection Plan, our Source Protection Committee, has amendments to their plan that they have in front of you today in the staff report for your endorsement. So this municipal council resolutions endorsing the proposed changes are required prior to public consultation. And the three proposed amendments to the Maitland Valley Source Protection Plan, which covers Harriston and Palmerston. So the Saugeen Plan covers Clifford and Minto Pines in the town. But the three proposed amendments are revision to wellhead protection areas that are outside of our town and outside of the county. And then, but the next two are very kind of near and dear to us. The second policy is a revision that would allow the risk management officials to provide written direction to municipal staff to allow exemptions from the Section 59 notice process. So what's been going on since the effective date of this plan on April 1st, 2015 is that in Harriston and Palmerston, all building and all planning applications require a review and a legal notice from risk management officials under the Clean Water Act. And this is due to the fact that the Maitland Valley Source Protection Plan did not have any provisions for exemptions in it. They were one of the earlier plans, and the exemption provision kind of came from the ministry as direction sort of late in the process. So, for example, we've gotten the report there for you, things like accessibility upgrades, fire alarms, general household renovations, decks, all required a notice in Harriston and Palmerston, and you can see the differences in the numbers. So in 2017 to date, we've issued 73 notices in the town of Minto under the Clean Water Act. In the rest of the county combined, we've issued 58. And we have some level of exemption in the rest of the county, as well as in Clifford, in the Saugeen portion of the town of Minto, we have some level of exemption.
Does that mean that areas for the town of Minto are more efficient than the rest of the county?
No, it means that we've been having to issue notices and do a risk management review for every single permit within the wellhead protection areas for Harriston and Palmerston. So it means that really there should be some exemptions to this notice process is what we have in Saugeen as well as in the rest of the parts of the county. The third amendment is the effective date for risk management plans. So the effective date for risk management plans under the Maitland plan was 3 years from the from the date that the plan became effective. So that was the plan became effective on April 1st, 2015, and all risk management plans were to be completed by 2018. For a variety of reasons, ourselves as well as the other risk management officials in Maitland Valley, there is good reason to extend that timeline to 5 years. And we've outlined that in some of the reasons in this report. One of the reasons that was that impacted us was that a majority of the risk management plans in the town of Minto for the Maitland Valley portion of the town are related to certain type of chemical handling that can be present in commercial, industrial, and retail products like brake cleaners, automotive fluids, solvents, etc. The province released the guidance on what was in and what was out 18 months after the Maitland plan was effective. So we already lost 18 months in terms of negotiating the risk management plans. So on top of that, what we're finding is when we're negotiating these risk management plans with existing landowners, we need some time. There's some time to do this properly. If they have head offices or corporate offices, we need some time. They need some time to consult with those corporate offices on spill plans, on corporate procedures that may impact the risk management plan. So we've been talking with the Maitland Valley risk management officials, and they went to the committee and looked for an extension. That extension to the timeline does align with other timelines that we have, including the one in Saugeen, which is 5 years from the effective date of the plan. So in summary, those are the three amendments that are in front of you today, and we would respectfully ask that Council receives the report and also endorses the proposed amendments. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Kyle. Any questions for Kyle? Okay, thank you very much for your time. And
thank you.
The recommendation is that Council receives the Osabo, Bayfield, and Maitland Valley Source Protection Plans amendments. Report by Kyle Davies, dated November 30th, 2017, and further that pursuant to Section 34, Subsection 3 of the Clean Water Act 2006, the Council of the Town of Minto endorsed the proposed amendments to the Osabo, Bayfield, and Maitland Valley Source Protection Plans. Provisions of this resolution meet requirements of Section 34, Subsection 3 of the Clean Water Act 2006 prior to formal public consultation. Mover, Councillor Dirksen, Councillor Anderson, all in favor? Declare the motion carried. Thank you, Kyle.
Much. Thank you.
Thanks for coming, Kyle.
And business and economic structural grant will post, and that's Belinda's back on the table.
I'll be shorter this time. Sorry.
Oh, please.
Get carried away.
No, you're just fine.
Okay, so this is a structural grant request from the Old Post, and I think the report pretty much covers it all. So unless you guys have questions, it's for a small amount, just under $6,000, to improve windows, electrical, HVAC ductwork, reinforce the main beam and the roof, and the third floor furnace ductwork, reconstruction of the parking lot, reinforcing the driveway, etc., etc. So yeah, this report highlights the other grants that the Hendricks have received for the Old Post. All that's allowed. You can apply every year. That's the total amount and the leverage for the building. And that's just the leverage on the items that they applied for. The leverage, if we included all the things they've had to do on this building, would be quite a lot higher than this for sure. So, any questions?
Any questions? That's just my question is everything falls under our rules and regulations.
Yes, CBO Kuipers has been in and inspected it multiple times.
Perfect.
We've reviewed this together, and yep, all is good. And the escape room is getting close to opening, so I'm sure we'll be checking that out shortly.
We're going to try that again?
Nope. Just motion by Councillor Turton, seconded by Councillor Elliott. The Council receives the November 28th, 2017 report from the Business and Economic Manager regarding structural improvement grant application number H05 and approves the amount of $5,916.08 for the property located at 39 Laura Street, South Harrison, the old post. All in favor? Declare the motion carried. Building assistant. I think, aren't you the boss?
He's both.
Just left me too.
All right, so I'm going to speak to Michelle's report. She's down south for the week, so you'll have to put up with me. The proposal for this lot, which is located on the 7th line, is to sever 13.5 acres off the slightly over 100-acre parcel. The unique thing about this property is, and we haven't seen any of these for years now, is the official plan designation is prime agricultural, which the province doesn't allow for severances off of prime ag land. The reason why this is coming forward and attached to the report is a justification study that this 13.5-acre parcel will be a viable farm. So the proposal is to construct a house and then grow hops on that 13.5 acres. So in there, they've got the whole business plan as to the process and that. So staff, we met, we looked at the application, wasn't any major concerns on our behalf, and putting forward a recommendation that council approves the, or supports the severance with the following conditions. So our standard financial or otherwise, just costs that we're incurring. That the applicant pay for parkland dedication, being that this isn't a surplus farm dwelling severance that we deal with quite a bit. But this instead actually is a building lot. That a new drainage assessment schedule be created. Satisfactory entrance. So basically they're going to have a proper entrance to the property. And number 5 is just a note about development charges that they'll have to be paid once building permit for the house is issued. Any questions?
I still don't understand how this is exempted from the prime.
It's not exempted from the prime ag. Essentially, the official plan designates a property 86 acres or more is a viable farm.
Correct.
Which the retained portion is slightly over the 86 acres. But they had to prove through the study that's attached that they can actually make a living off that 13.5 acres. So
yeah,
then it's a viable
I totally
farm.
understand.
Oh, okay.
I totally understand that part. But that doesn't mean you have to sever 13 acres to make that viable living. That's it's just yeah. I don't object to it. I just don't understand it.
Okay, I don't know the rationale behind exactly why it's got to be the 13 acres. It couldn't be 10.
Yeah. Councillor Elliott.
I understand that where they're coming from. It's got to be viable, and they're going to be. What happens if it does fail and wish to sell it in the future? Anybody can use it. It just has to be used for ag.
It can be used for anything. So someone could just buy it and just let it, naturalize itself, or have a nice 13-acre rural residential lot
or whatever.
13 acres of corn.
Could be. Yep. Yeah. There isn't anything.
But it has to be agricultural related. And now from the time it failed to have a new owner, they don't have to justify making money to buy it.
No, because you can't undo the severance.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Councillor Turk.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Faulkner. Is there a big market for hops?
According to the study, it is, and it's growing. It's expanding. I believe Belinda mentioned that we import the majority of our hops from the States. Okay. So having the whole, grown locally.
For microbreweries.
Yep.
So there's enough heat units, and is hops something you can grow every year on the same property?
The way in the report or in the justification study, it says it takes 4 years to grow. So basically, once they're established, they keep growing. So you're not ripping them out and then replanting them.
I got you.
It's more like a vine or a bush.
It sure is. Yeah. Did you want to say anything, Belinda?
Really loud.
No. Thank you. Yeah, I was just going to say there is a lot of the hops come from out of province, out of Canada, I guess, and there is a shortage. And with a growing number of craft breweries here, I know these folks that are looking to do this have already made connections with other hop growers. They've already made connections with microbreweries. We're going to be working with them through Launch It and various other programs. So yeah, there is a demand for what they're doing. So maybe we'll get a brewery here next.
That we could have. Beer and pot and shrimp. Thank you. Carry on. Oh, do we want to do that recommendation each individual?
Should, but don't read the whole thing.
Yeah. No, I won't. The recommendation that's in our agenda that the council recommends a County of Wellington Land Division Committee approves severance application B136/17 Andrade, Part Lot 34, Concession 7, 550 7th line, Harrison, Town of Minto, with the following conditions. Mover, Councillor Elliott, Councillor Dirksen, all in favor? Declare the motion carried. Carry on.
Perfect. So yeah, my next report is on my permit stats. So this report is both October as well as November. October, things dipped a little bit, construction permit number wise, and construction value was lower than the previous year. We did 13 permits in October worth almost $500,000 versus 15 permits last year worth $2 million. And then moving on to November, so things picked back up. So we did 16 permits worth 1.7 versus 8 permits last year worth 1.2. So overall, things are looking good. So at the end of November, we've issued 215 permits worth a touch over $27.5 million, which we've never hit since I've been here. So that's it's been good. October highlights, we'd had 4 new agricultural projects and 3 residential additions were kind of the big ones. The picture that's in the report is a picture of a shed that just recently got built on Road 1 North. November's highlights, we issued 3 more houses, 1 in Harrison and then 2 up in Clifford on our Ann Street lots. And we issued permits for 5 industrial, commercial, or institutional projects, kind of scattered throughout the municipality. In there's a picture of a new house under construction by Pike Lake, and then Felix Weber's warehouse project is the one on the right there. So nice, big, wide open space.
Wow.
Permit numbers. So the end of October, we issued 199 permits, which is higher than our 169.4, which is our 10-year average. And then, as mentioned, we did 215 in total by the end of November, where our average is 25 permits lighter than that. So we did good. And the picture attached to that one is our new heated self-storage building that went up this year in Harrison. So end of October, we hit almost 26 million, just a touch under, which is substantially higher than 15.2, which is our kind of 10-year average. Picture on the right, that's our new subdivision that the services are getting installed in Palmerston. Looks a lot different than that now. That's a couple of weeks old. It's really drastically changed since then. So end of November, 17 million is our 10-year average, and we're about 10 million higher than that at touch over 27.5 million. That's
Thank you.
It.
Any questions, Councillor Turton?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Faulkner. Have you got a crystal ball? Is it going to continue, or have we got any more lots for sale?
We're almost out of lots. Construction-wise, I think next year is going to be close to the same as this year. We've got some industrial builds that still need to go, and I think the new subdivisions opening up, residential end of things is really going to consume my time, which is awesome.
Any other questions? Just, where's that located, that heated storage?
Oh, in Harrison at the Harrison Super Storage, just right by Tim Hortons there in the industrial park, by the car wash.
Oh,
Heritage
okay.
Yep.
Sorry, I missed it. Thank you. Motion, Councillor Turton, Councillor Anderson. that the council receives the chief building officials' October and November permit review for information. All in favor? Declare the motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Deputy Clerk. You're on.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Faulkner. Mine is the exciting Bill 68, Modernizing Municipal Legislation Act. It's pretty exciting. There's a lot of changes coming forward from it. In the fall of 2015, we reported to you on different amendments to the Municipal Act and Conflict of Interest Act that was being considered as part of a 5-year review of the legislation. January 1st, the Ombudsman assumed responsibility for municipal oversight. In 2016, we then passed a Code of Conduct, fiscal accountability, transparency, and complaint policy in order to fit in with the provincial oversight. Early in 2017, staff reported to you on Bill 68 that had received second reading and advised of some of the new provisions. So on May 30th, Bill 68 then received royal assent. There's been a lot of changes to a lot of different acts. I'm just going to go over a few of the different items that are being phased in or have already been phased in. In force on May 30th was the Municipal Elections Act change to term of council. That really won't come in effect until the 2022 term. They decided that they would keep the term the same from 2018 to 2022, and then in 2022 they're going to start it early in November instead of December. Contributions changed as well for candidates. Phase 2 in force January, coming up in 2018. There'll be changes to the council composition. The only change that we're going to see with this is because our mayor is also part of county council. If he's unable to make it, our deputy mayor would be able to go in his place. I'm not sure how county feels about that. New definitions of a meeting makes things a little more clarified, and it lets you know that members have to discuss certain things to advance the business and the decision making of council to be considered a meeting. It used to be if you all met at Tim Hortons for coffee, they could consider that a meeting. That they've clarified that now, so that's not going to happen. There is new closed meeting exceptions. They've added 4 new ones. These provisions are not contained in MFIPA, and so we really want to be careful when you're using these to go into closed. I'm not sure the reasoning for them, but you can see them there. There are 4 new ones. It has to do with trade secrets. And then K, which just seems to cover pretty well everything. Electronic participation in council meetings. So you can now have electronic participation in council meetings, but they cannot be counted as part of quorum. It's not permitted for any local boards or committees, and of course is not allowed for closed session. Staff is recommending that it is not permitted, and for the reasons would be technology problems. It would be a big thing. We don't have an IT people here. It's me trying to help figure out how to do things. Sound issues, accessibility for formats, and moving from open to closed as well, because you can't be in closed when you are electronic, but you could be in open. We also have our meetings online for people to watch if they wanted to keep up to date. We could maybe consider a one-off if there is someone away on an extended leave for illness, but that would have to be taken care of through procedures before we did that. Closed meeting investigator and reports. So I'm asking about a new agreement with John Maddox. That's who we have an agreement with right now as our closed meeting investigator, but he was under JM Consulting. He's just changing it under his own name. The county is going to, we go with the county, and all the municipalities have him as well. So nothing's really changed except for his name. Phase 2, which is in force of April 1st of 2018, election campaign advertising, mandatory information for advertising, third-party advertising, which they'll now have to register with the town, and financial statements, which means the clerk will be responsible to review all financial statements filed by the candidates. And phase 3, which is March 1st of 2019, the council code of conduct. There are a lot of places that do not have one in place. Of course, we already do have one. We will review it, though, to make sure that any prescribed changes that we have covered off. Integrity Commissioner is a new one. You will have to have one and have it appointed by March 1st. The county clerk, myself, and the clerk of Centre Wellington met with Guy Giorno, and there was an attached report there from Donna, and we are recommending that we hire him starting in 2019. Policy on staff relations with council is already covered under our code of conduct, but will have to be reviewed. A policy for pregnancy and parental leave for council members will be drafted and given to you at a later date. Policy for tree canopy, which has already passed a retention and management for tree policy in 2016, but they may have to be reviewed as well. Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, the duty of members, and we have just started doing that. So if there's a conflict of interest, you must make that in a written format, and we must keep that on record. So we have started doing that just recently, and that will continue. Our procedure bylaw will have to be amended to reflect any legislative changes, and staff will draft any policies and bylaws that may be required for phase 3, but closer to the date. Financial considerations are unknown. It all depends on work that we may need for the investigator, that we would be responsible for all of that. And my recommendation is that the council receives my report and that the town of Minto enter into an agreement with John Maddox as the closed meeting investigator for 2018 on a 1-year contract, and that we enter into an agreement with Guy Giorno as the town of Minto Integrity Commissioner to start in 2019.
Okay, you've heard the recommendation. Any questions first? Somebody like to make that motion? Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Anderson. All in favor? Declare the motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Clerk. Treasurer? Duff?
Going to have the chair of the Finance Committee.
Oh, sorry. I'll turn that meeting over to
It's okay.
Councillor Caldwell.
Don't matter.
Thank you for. You got to speak louder.
The Finance Committee has 2 items on the agenda tonight. The first one is the approval of roads. It looks like, or approval of roads, excuse me, the approval of accounts, which are primarily roads. But
I think you had that right.
That's a different kettle of fish.
Yes. And I'll turn it over to Treasurer Duff, please.
All right, well, we'll try and find a non-road one. We've ordered our salving downstairs. So that's $6,000. Hopefully some will be covered by insurance. And we have a floor to put it on now. That's good. And again, roads, yeah, that's our main thing. Another progress payment for Ann Street at $288,000. And George Street, as you can see, the last couple of weeks they've got a lot done, and this is the work that they previously did. So $402,000, and some electrical work too at $29,000. We also did issued the check for the structural grant for building on Elora Street and Harrison, and we've prepaid our fireworks for Fire and Ice for $10,000. So we'll have that for sure. So. As you say, the roads pretty much covers about 80% of all our expenditures this month. So.
Okay, are there any questions? Yes.
Through you, Councillor Caldwell. Why the big difference between Clifford, Harrison, Palmerston, and Norgan with respect to recreation?
That would probably be timing for hydro bills and things like that.
Okay.
And also you could get some
difference.
electrical work. I think there was some electrical work done in Clifford, so when that comes in,
okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
So moved.
That Council of the Town of Minto receives the Treasurer's report dated November 30th regarding approval of accounts and approves the Town of Minto accounts by department for October and November 2017. Moved by Deputy Mayor Faulkner, seconded by Councillor Dirksen. All in favor? And the motion is passed. And the second item is in regards to minutes of settlement and assessment adjustments.
Okay, so we have the amounts aren't huge, but there's several of them. So we have what we call a post-roll amended notice. So that's a PRAN. So MPAC sets and Janet, yeah, it's just all acronyms. So Janet wanted me to highlight the letters that the property owners get. So just the highlight is, Dear Sir, Madam, in the fall of 2016, a year ago, you received your property assessment notice. Following the delivery of the notice, an adjustment was made to more accurately reflect the portion of your property. So this is when MPAC has done a review and decided that they need to make an adjustment, and so they send out this PRAN. Even though it mentions 2016, these are not retroactive. These are effective January 1st of 17. And as I say, there's 8 of them, and they're basically taking, like, for example, you have a $13,000 assessment changing to an $11,000 assessment. And sometimes they're we call them the flips between residential assessment and farmland assessment. Where there could be a gravel pit on that's either being added or revalued according to new data. So anyway, we don't usually have quite as many. They're pretty insignificant. Most of them are, under $100, but there are several of them. Then we have the minutes of settlement. So that's when the property owner has done an appeal, and they've been successful in general. We always say they never go up, but we have one that went up. This is where the assessor thought there was a mobile unit removed, and it actually wasn't removed, so it's put back on the assessment roll, which is called a grossly manifest error.
Thanks for pointing that out.
There you go. So anyway, those are the things that are all involved and included in this report.
Yes, can you just explain the very last one, the assessment change to reflect sale price?
Yeah,
so that's an increase?
This is the one.
Is that the one you're talking about?
Is it 9112, that one, or?
Last number is 06570.
6570.
6570.
It's a rebate. The total rebates.
Oh yeah, 657.
Give me that page. So that would be if they've done an assessment, I guess, on looking at previous sale data, and they've decided there's
it's just a large
quite a
decrease.
Significant from $2 million to $800.
Yeah. Can you? I don't have that page.
Okay, can I just show it to you there?
On the screen.
Oh, okay. So that's going to be
that much?
Yeah. So that is. Yes. So that'll be a flip. I believe I know what it is, and I think it's a chemical processing or fertilizers and that. So that's when Ampac's made a change between industrial or commercial, and it may be the refining. So it's something that they've done, and
so it's an additional charge to the person or a credit. Like it doesn't have brackets around it. That's I think what's throwing me. So is that what?
It sounds like an increase.
But yet it does say total rebates.
Yeah.
But
the problem. See, if they make a change on IT, it's gone down. So the commercial assessment has gone up. That's back in 2013. So I'm thinking that is the property I referred to. But I'll get back to you later on that one.
All right. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure.
So are there any questions?
No.
Okay, then the recommendation is the council receives the December 2017 report from the treasurer and tax collector regarding assessment adjustments and that these adjustments be approved. May I have someone make that motion, please? Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Turton. All in favor? And the motion is passed. And I turn the chair back to Deputy Mayor Faulkner.
Okay, thank you. And now we turn it over to CEO White.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I'll be very brief. The microfit program is coming to an end at the province. We attempted to submit 2 last-minute applications, one for this property for one of those independent sun-directed solar installations. We have 9 of those, or 8 of those already, and one for this office, one for the roof of the Harrison Lyons Medical Clinic. They were filed on Friday, and about Friday at 5 o'clock, the program was completed. So all the applications for the total amount available, they basically shut the program down in the middle of our application. So we have 1.5 applications in.
1.5.
Because you have the application in doesn't mean you're going to get them. But I wanted to let council know that we, through our solar supplier, did submit on those 2 properties. It's okay to have a half application in, because as certain people get offered contracts, they're not prepared to go ahead, then they do move to some of the others. So just to let you know that we may have a couple more come on stream in the future here if we happen to get contract offers. So the one for this building or property here, we might be able to tie into either a electronic vehicle charging station if council wanted to go that far, and that would be a decision to make many months from now if we do get a contract offer. Or even if we wanted to just put something on, say, the roof of a shed that we might use for Mennonite visitors to the town office. We do have a jigger shed in Palmerston where we did put solar panels on top of that. So we're looking at innovative ways to try and capitalize on what's remaining of this program. And just under the financial considerations, I guess the 16 or 17 installations we have hosted on our properties or are in the process of hosting are likely going to, over the 20 years that we're in this program, generate to the town about $1 million. That's just to host those panels. So it's been 6 or 7 years with the solar provider. He also did install one of the electronic vehicle charging stations on our behalf up in Clifford. So he has the ground mount solar installations yet to go ahead with, but the big solar installations on most of our roofs are moving forward. So our partnership is still ongoing. It's getting to come to a conclusion as far as the installations go. Probably be another year or so. Then we will be finishing, and these will be generating revenue for them and generating power for the grid and returning some amounts of revenue to the town over the program. So just motion that you receive the report and that you acknowledge the 2 applications that we submitted. When I wrote the report, we hadn't actually only got 1.5 installed, so we'll see what happens.
Sure. Okay. Any other questions? Recommendation that the council receives the CAO's clerk's December 1st, 2017 report regarding applications for microfit sites Minto, Sunsaver, and Arngen, and council approves applications being submitted for these sites, subject to installation details being presented to council if an IESO approval contract offer is received. By Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Dirksen. All in favor? Declare the motion carried.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, just to add, we were supposed to be able to submit applications to December 28th, so we're kind of surprised that they shut down.
Yeah, it would be.
Anyway.
Thank you. Okay. Other items, business disclosed. Let's see now. I think the first person that put up their hand was Councillor Dirksen.
All right. So I just wanted to do a shout out to the Public Works Department and Paul Judge maybe in particular, because we were, as a council, we were involved in 3 different parades in the town of Minto. We had good representation of council at all 3 of those parades. We got wet twice, really wet twice, and but Saturday night in Palmerston, the weather was fantastic, so that was a nice way to end. Yeah, I just wanted to really thank Paul Judge for decorating the float, and thanks to Bill and Terry for driving the truck last week.
Yes.
Very well
done. Councillor Turk, you're next.
So mine. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Faulkner. Mine kind of goes along the same way, and I mean, I'm looking at the fire service. Our fire service, all 3 fire services were instrumental in our Santa Claus parades. And I'm very grateful to all those volunteers to come out and bring their equipment out and block the streets and plan it, and everything that they did was wonderful. A lot of people supported it. So my shout out is to our chief and his crew, fire service. Thank you.
Want to bring Councillor Elliott was next.
Okay, along with the parade, I just, and that's maybe more for information or thoughts, I did have some complaints come back to me, Palmerston Parade, from some of the people that were watching the parade. They were concerned about council vote, people throwing candies from the vote. They were concerned about safety, and they were concerned about the town buying candy. I know that the town doesn't buy candy, that's why I brought it up. Each individual member here takes their turn buying candy. So I want to make that clear. As far as throwing candy,
Thank you. Yeah, and I thank you, Councillor, and again I will reiterate, the Minto taxpayers do not fund our candy for the parade. So make that clear. All right. Anything else, Councillor Anderson?
Just a reminder about the community Christmas dinner on December 25th. Just to be clear, there's confusion about whether it's the 26th or the 25th, but it is on the 25th at 1 o'clock at the Harriston Community Center. All are welcome. Promises to be as good a time as it was last year. I just want to remind people and remind anybody that they know of that would be out there alone to give us a call or a shout out, or if they can't come, that we would deliver a meal to them.
Thank you. And mine is, again, a reminder that come have breakfast with Santa on this Saturday at Harry Stone's, and promises to be a good event. Lots of prizes, and that's hosted by the Shriners, Palmoka Shriners. Okay. Moved by Councillor Turton, seconded by Councillor Dirksen, that the Committee of the Whole convenes into regular council meeting. All in favor? Okay, that motion carried. And moved by Councillor Caldwell, seconded by Councillor Elliott, that the Council of the Town of Minto ratifies the motions made in Committee of the Whole. All in favor? Okay, that motion carried. And moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Turton, that bylaw 2017-99 to amend the emergency response plan for the County of Wellington member municipalities be introduced and read a first, second, third time, and passed in open council and sealed with the seal of the corporation. All in favor? There, that motion carried. Moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Dirksen, seconded by Councillor Caldwell, that bylaw 2017-100 to confirm actions of the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Minto respecting a meeting held December the 5th, 2017, be introduced and read first, second, third time, and passed in open council and sealed with the seal of the corporation. All in favor? That motion carried. And moved by, do you want me to do a reminder of December 12th, everybody, for our budget meeting? Moved by Councillor Elliott, second by Councillor Anderson, that the Council of the Town of Minto adjourned to meet again at the call of the mayor. All in favor? There, that motion carried. Good meeting. Thank you, folks.